Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Today we're talking with Gregg Ritz about the return of Thompson Center.
This podcast is brought to you by Thor Bullets. Thor Bullets are a premium full-bore muzzleloader bullet designed specifically for modern inline rifles. Thor Bullets do not require plastic sabots or belts to be fired, meaning less cleaning for you between shots. The patented copper base creates an airtight seal, giving you greater distance and accuracy. Thor's unique engineering allows the bullets to retain 95% of their weight upon impact, and the controlled expansion ensures large, easy-to-follow blood trails. Thor bullets are currently available in a 50 caliber version that is sized to your specific bore. Thor is also expanding into a new 45 caliber bullet designed for faster 1 in 24 and 1 in 22 twist inline rifles. For more information on these great bullets, visit www.thorbullets.com. We'd like to thank Thor Bullets for their sponsorship of this podcast. So what was your first experience with a muzzleloader?
When I was growing up, I started off bow hunting at age 11. So I moved from more of a city environment around where my school was to out into the country. And there was a reservoir across the street from where I lived called Liberty Reservoir. It's about 3,500 acres. And it was bow hunting only.
Okay.
And, you know, my parents really weren't into hunting. My next door neighbor was a big hunter. And he was a bow hunter, gun hunter, muzzleloader, like any season he participated in.
Huh.
So I started off bow hunting just because it was the easiest thing to do, coming up through the Boy Scouts and shooting in the backyard. But when I was 16 years old, the first gun that I ever owned was a muzzleloader.
Oh, wow.
And it was a Thompson Center Scout muzzleloader. So my next door neighbor who got me into hunting, his name's Bob Baffert. He's been on my television show, and he, you know, I give him a lot of credit to my passion for the outdoors and to hunting. And he knew how much I loved archery and fletching arrows and cresting them and you know, the art of learning how to shoot. So instead of starting off with a bolt action rifle or what have you, he said, you know, he talked to my parents, and my parents gave me the gift, and I got a Scout muzzleloader, which was Thompson Center's first inline muzzleloader.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
A lot of people don't even, you know, remember TC, you know, back in the day in the transition from the Hawken to the inline, but that was kind of that first pinnacle inline for him.
Wow. Okay. And about what year was that?
So that would have been about 1985, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Mid 80s.
Okay, that gives a good frame of reference then.
But so think about what happened to muzzleloading. Of course, obviously, you know, you're well versed on muzzleloading. So in the mid 80s, a major thing happened in the industry, and that was night rifles. That was Tony Knight, who I give tremendous credit to help modernize the sport of muzzleloading.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, you know, he came out with the MK85, right? Which came out in 1985.
Yeah.
So maybe I got the muzzle, maybe this was 86 or 87, you know, when TC reacted to the inline. So somewhere in the mid 80s, muzzleloading took this big turn. So Thompson Center developed the sport of muzzleloading, right? Going all the way back to 1970, the introduction of the Hawken. 72 was big for the industry with the Jeremiah Johnson movie.
Oh yeah,
right. Robert Redford.
Yep.
And Hatchet Jack, right? And he got his muzzleloader, right? Pried it out of his cold dead fingers.
Oh yeah.
And but TC focused on creating separate seasons. And a lot of people don't realize about Thompson Center is the management then, the owners then, Bob Gustafson. He really focused on not only making guns, but how do we create opportunities at the state level? So they invested a lot of time and a lot of money to create these seasons. So a lot of people who hunt today, especially my kids, they grew up and there was always a muzzleloader season.
Right. Well, yeah. A lot of people today have no concept of what it was before this, before what we have now.
Exactly. So in the 80s, we had this perfect storm of most of your major whitetail hunting states had separate muzzleloading seasons. And quite frankly, Ethan, that's when whitetail populations exploded at the same time.
Okay.
So if you talk to a lot of guys in their 60s and 70s. So I say guys, farmers in the Midwest, and say, hey, when you were growing up as a kid, did you see a lot of whitetails? Did you have all this deer damage in your crops? And they'll go, we never even saw a deer, never saw a track in the 60s and 70s. So the whitetail populations exploded in the 80s, which dovetailed with the new seasons, which dovetailed with the technology change originally brought about by Tony Knight. So it was this perfect storm to create the momentum behind muzzleloading.
Wow. I'm familiar with that. My grandfather actually won one of the first tags here in Indiana when they introduced a whitetail season. And he traveled to central southern Indiana with his muzzleloader to have an opportunity to hunt deer. And my father still talks about it today, that you didn't have the game populations that you have now, and things have ebbed and flowed. But now, I mean, I can see a dozen deer on my drive to work every day. And it's not always been like that.
No. And then obviously what happened, so as the populations increased, more people participated, pushed the technology. Thompson Center obviously comes out with the Scout muzzleloader, and then the Firehawk and the Thunderhawk, and all the way up through the Encore. And of course, Knight was doing the same thing. Traditions was doing the same thing at CVA. So there were like four major players at the time, and obviously Remington came in and out, Savage came in and out of muzzleloading. But the sport really, with the heyday, was kind of the mid 80s, through the early 2000s from a technology standpoint. But what the other thing that was happening as we got into the 2000s were people buying recreational farm ground.
Okay.
And obviously, Indiana was a big state. Ohio was a big state. Illinois, a lot of the Midwestern type states. And people were developing the land, managing the land. And a lot of these muzzleloading seasons were towards the back end of the season. A lot of them were after gun, right?
Right, yeah.
And what happened when people managed the land, they started managing and putting food plots in. So the food plot industry really didn't exist until the mid 80s either, or into the 90s. So also now you have these food plots late season attracting all of these animals. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's right in the middle of muzzleloader season. And, people who weren't successful with a bow or a gun said, hey, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity, because the technology made it so easy. Right, to load it, to clean it, to know it's safe. The ignition was reliable. Pellets came out in 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think that was when we first started to see those.
Of course, now you have Blackhorn powder. Now you have fire stick technology. So all of those innovations led to simplicity and of course performance. I mean, you have muzzleloaders today. I mean, even I will tell you, you take a Traditions muzzleloader. They make a fantastic value for the gun, and their guns every day of the week, are capable. I'm talking accuracy wise, to drop a deer or elk out to 200 yards. Yeah, and then you take guns like the Encore and some of the custom guns that are made today. People are going 300 and 400 yards with these guns. Yeah. And of course, optics and bullets and powder have all contributed, not just the gun. But it's interesting to see what's happened with the sport over all these years.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of cultural and manufacturing history. And I often refer to, after the MK85, you really have a perfect storm of manufacturing technology, of material technology, and of culture and conservation, really. And I think it's a great point that you've brought up here, that really for 20, 25 years just radically changed things really quickly. And now we can look back on it, in some respects as history, because we're in a kind of a different phase now. But it was really an interesting time, I think, to see all of these changes and to see, and now we can look at it as to how we got to where we are today.
Oh, absolutely. And to see where, it has changed over the years. So, we went through, the big change in firearm regulations in the Midwest as more farm ground was developed and more hedgerows pushed out and more blocks of timber dozed for more corn and bean production, right? Then the state said, hey, we need to restrict certain firearms. So we're going to make it slug gun hunting and muzzleloader hunting. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't take people long to figure out muzzleloaders, although they are single shot, are superior in accuracy to a slug gun.
Oh yeah,
like not even
joke.
Today, even today with great ammunition, right?
Yeah,
quantity included. They all make great ammunition, but they don't make it as good as hand loading in a barrel. And of course, now regulations evolve again. Now you straight wall cartridges. So the pendulum swings back a little bit the other way. But to your point, that historical perspective is interesting to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the history and the culture changes and things, but what were you doing then, kind of while all of this happened? What's your history in this industry, and then how did that lead us to where we are today?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be in the industry, and fortunately, a lot of kids. I mean, I look at my daughters now. I have one out of college and one in college and one getting ready to go in college in the Army, and ROTC. Mm-hmm. And my middle daughter, she's on a track. She knows I'm going to nursing school. She knows where she's going. And my other, my youngest daughter now going into the military, criminal justice and all this. So they kind of know where they're going. I knew exactly where I wanted to go when I came out of college. I wanted to be in the industry. So I was a competitive shooter, spent a couple years at the Olympic Training Center, working with the junior Olympic team. Okay. And for international trap and skeet shooting. Okay. Mainly trap. Mm-hmm. But I went to school in Ohio, college, at Ohio Wesleyan, and Delaware, Ohio, which is just north of Columbus, Ohio. So I was in the heartbed of whitetails. Yeah, you're in the zone, man. In the perfect time. I was in the zone. I was at the perfect time with the whitetail explosion. My dad and my grandfather owned a farm in southern Ohio. So it was like, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours from college that I could go to on the weekends and have some private ground to hunt. And so I was one of those blessed people to have been exposed to firearms and competitive shooting and the gun industry and reloading ammunition, for trap shooting and center fire. There's a perfect storm of knowledge. Yeah. And so I get out of college and I have a business degree and an English degree. And, I try to get a job with a manufacturer's rep agency. And okay. I didn't even know what that was at the time. Right. I was kind of told through people in the industry, hey, if you like sales and you like the industry, get in with a manufacturer's rep. So I said, well, who's the best in Maryland, or at least on the Atlantic seaboard? Because I grew up in Maryland. And they said, GB Stump Associates, they're the best. They have Loophole, they have Maglite, they have Nosler, they have all these other good lines. Okay. So I reach out to George Stump, who owns it, and said, hey, I'd like to apply for a job getting out of college. And, I had some contacts. Sandy Wood, who was a guy who ran all the pro shooters for Winchester. He gave me his contact. And so I thought I had a warm intro. Okay. Yeah. And, you don't just email or contact the owner of a company anymore about a job. Well, it is interesting. So think about like how people communicate today. I'm glad you brought that up. You can DM somebody, you can text somebody, everybody's information is available. Yeah. So not to date myself, but cell phones are just coming out. Right. Yeah. Right. There weren't emails. So it's old school, right? It's pick up the phone and call somebody.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I remember traveling on the road. I carried rolls of quarters, and I knew where all the payphones were.
Yeah. See, that's
true story.
That's my young millennial mindset, I guess, thinking email.
Right. Exactly. So I called George Stump. He said, "Hey, appreciate you reaching out. Sandy was, he says a lot of great things about you. We don't have any openings, and." Appreciate everything, stay in touch. And I said, well, thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate that. But today's your lucky day. And he goes, how do you figure it's my lucky day? I said, because I'm going to take you to lunch. And he goes, that's okay. We don't need to meet. And I said, no. I said, I went to school, right down the street, high school from where your office is. I already looked it up. And I said, let me take you to lunch. He goes, okay, you don't have to take me to lunch, but kid, I'll let you come in and talk to me for 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So go in there, we have a great conversation. 15 minutes turns into an hour. And so I said, hey, thank you for the time. Keep me in consideration. I said, one of these days I'll work for you. And he looks at me, he goes, that's a really strange comment to make. And I said, why is that strange? And he says, why do you figure you're going to work for me? And I said, well, I'm just getting out of college. I'm 22 years old. Somebody's going to die or retire from your company at some point during my life.
Right. Time is on your side here.
Time's on my side. And he smiled and shook my hand. He goes, have a nice day, kid. Right?
He's like, get out of here.
Right. So I end up moving to Florida to work in the graphic arts and printing industry.
Okay.
Night shift, graveyard shift. Like my kids ever thought they had to work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., they would revolt. So I just literally worked the graveyard shift, but I stayed in touch for 2 years with George Stump. And he calls me up one day. He goes, you still want to work for me? I said, I told you somebody's going to die or somebody's going to retire. So the answer is yes. He goes, well, nobody died.
Well, thank goodness.
He said, but we just brought on Remington Arms. We're now the rep agency with Remington Arms.
Okay. And
he said, I need a guy to work dealers. I said, you just tell me when and where. I packed my car up and I said I can be there in 2 weeks. And I just started stocking shelves, working promotions. And that was how I got into the industry. Like literally just working stocking shelves as a sales rep.
Okay. So you're just putting stuff on gun shop shelves. When you say promos, you're just hanging up like posters and end caps and things like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and if somebody has a Labor Day promotion, a fall classic,
okay.
So I would put my Remington shirt on, right, and I would go in and I would help educate, train, stock shelves, ring cap, whatever the dealers wanted. I was a dealer support guy. Okay, and so after after a year or two of that. Then it's okay. We'll give you a territory where you can make some sales calls. Mm-hmm. And again, I've just been so blessed in my life. I had one of the guys in the rep group. His name was Bob Reiner. And, he had a big territory. So he actually came out of Remington. And so he was handling the big wholesalers. Well, he and I became good friends, and unfortunately, he ended up coming down with cancer. And so he needed somebody to basically do the sales calls for him. So I became his gopher. Okay. Right? Go to AccuSport, go to Advanced Sporting Goods, go over here, and he was quarterbacking me, but at the same time, I didn't realize he was training me. Yeah. Yeah. He's sharing that knowledge with you. Right, because I didn't know how bad his situation was or whatever. But anyway, so he basically put me on the fast track of learning. And, and here I am in my mid-20s with a $20 million sales territory. That's crazy. Think about that. Yeah. And now, granted, it's under him, right? So I said collectively. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, I'm the guy who's doing the training, writing the order. So But I love the industry so much that, it's like 7 days a week was, I remember going to some of these trap ranges and like setting targets like, I don't know if you've trap shot before. You got the concrete houses, and they got the targets. Well, back then they weren't automated. You had to set a target by hand.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's somebody in the trap house.
There's somebody in the trap house. There's a kid in the trap house.
Yep.
That used to be me.
Making summer money.
Making summer money, right? And then going to the Grand American of Vandalia, Ohio. So all of that was how I got involved in the industry. And then in 96, I think it's 96, Bob Gustafson calls me from Thompson Center Arms and says, hey, would you like to interview for a job? What I didn't realize at the time, so here's a funny story. So Jason Hornady is one of my best friends.
Okay.
Jason, obviously, he and his dad, Steve, own Hornady Manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So Jason is third generation. So Joyce, Steve, Jason. Okay. Joyce died when Steve was young in a plane accident. I think he was going to a SHOT Show maybe. So anyway, what I didn't realize at the time, Jason and I used to be sales reps together, worked for different agencies, because I eventually moved out to Ohio, where his territory was. And so Bob Gustafson had reached out to Jason to be the sales manager for Thompson Center.
Okay.
Jason interviewed, liked it, and decided it wasn't for him. Right? He had some other career ambitions. But what I didn't know is he gave my name to the owner and said, hey, I'm going to turn the job down. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. But he said, I got a guy you need to talk to.
Yeah.
His name's Gregg Ritz. And so Bob calls me up. Then Jason, obviously connected the dots later with, hey, listen, I put your name in hat in the ring here. Don't screw it up. Although he used profanity.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so that's how Bob and I got connected. And long story short, relocated to Rochester, New Hampshire, and started working for Thompson Center.
Wow. I mean, I love stories like that because it's just human networking. I mean, now there's, when you apply for a job, like a computer system analyzes everything and multiple times before somebody looks at it. But, you had done some hard work and it maybe pestered some guys a little too much, but it made you stick in their head and that allowed you to keep going. You didn't give up. I think that's great.
No. And that's one great thing about this industry, despite the sophistication now and private equity coming in and the professionalism and publicly held companies getting bigger, it's still about your network.
Yeah.
It's still about relationships. And, I return every phone call, every text, and I still spend a lot of time at retail events, consumer events, trying to always broaden my network because I never forget to where I came from. And then I'm always looking for who are the young kids coming in? Who are the people showing up at the trade shows who want to be in the industry? How can I, bring more talent to this industry and find those up and comers? And I love doing that. And that's, what I've done here at Wildcom. And now it's obviously taken me full circle right back to Thompson Center. Right.
Wow. That's just neat, to go around full circle like that.
I am. I'm blessed. Had a great run with Thompson Center. Learned a lot about how to run a business there from a cultural perspective. Because Bob Gustafson and Ken French, who was the general manager, Bob was the owner. They built a great culture around family, customer service. Put the customer first. Build the best product you possibly can. And do what you can to support the industry. So a lot of the values and ethics I have now from a business perspective, I learned on the job. I didn't learn it in college. I didn't learn it in a book. Like I learned it because I got my hands dirty. I mean, I remember I start working at TC. Yeah. This is another great story. So start working at TC. Of course, there's always any manufacturing company is going to tell you this. You have manufacturing and engineering, right? And then you got sales and marketing.
Yep.
Right.
It's all separate.
Right. It's separate. It's like, oh, those sales and marketing guys promising this, giving the store away. Right. Right. They get to go on the hunts or the trips or travel or what have you. And this is a very, very New England company. Like, I mean, a lot of the people who worked at Thompson Center came out of the wool mills, the shoe mills, came out as loggers. Like, these were hardcore, hard-working people. So I go to work, and of course, I grew up in Maryland, Catholic boy, went to school with a coat and tie on, right? So I show up, and they're looking at me like, boy, you don't fit in here.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, listen, I was only 20 miles south of the Mason-Dixon line. I really am a northerner. They're looking at me like I'm a southerner. So I got to be friends with Ken French, like I said, who was the general manager. And I realized pretty quickly, like, I had to earn my stripes. I needed to learn the product, even though I grew up with it, and learn the company. So I came in every day. It's 7 a.m. every day I wasn't on the road, and I would go down to warranty repair, and I would sit on the bench and I would repair guns.
Okay.
For an hour and a half, or I go in the shooting tunnel and test shoot them. And that's how I started to learn the inner workings of a flintlock, the inner workings of a cap lock, what creates accuracy on a gun, how to load, how to shoot, the various powders and bullets, It was just grinding it out every day on the bench with these guys. And so two things occurred. One is I earned their respect, but the other thing is, I physically touched all the products. So when I would go into the marketplace, I understood it. I believed in it. I knew what it would do because I saw where it came from. Yeah. Because the company was vertically integrated, right? They had a foundry. They made their own barrels. They machined their own parts. At that point, they made their own wooden stocks.
Yeah, they were doing everything.
And they were doing everything. And so there's a value to be able to say that you touched every aspect of the company. Not that I was proficient in every aspect, but at least I understood the human part of it, what went into making it so great. And that's really what I want to bring back for TC now.
So on that point then, how did this transition come to be? Because when it was announced that Thompson Center was going to be kind of divested, and I was one of them. I think the video is still out there that I said, I'm not expecting this to ever come back. I know it's a brand that a lot of people love, ton of brand loyalty, but it's just not the kind of thing we see anymore. When something like this happens, that's just kind of it. So how did this happen with Thompson Center coming back then? Yeah,
so 2021, as you know, COVID is in full swing, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of your outdoor product lines. Guns, ammo, archery, ATVs, UTVs, motorhomes, everything in the outdoors was exploding. Right?
Yeah, huge.
And which, by the way, was great for our sport. We needed it. It brought so many participants in on the hunt, shoot, and fish side.
We were seeing, even in muzzleloading, just incredible numbers of people getting into it.
Like that part of the pandemic, really helped favor the industry. And so Smith & Wesson, Mark Smith is the CEO over there. Great man. And by the way, he's a hardcore hunter too, which is kind of cool. Not just a gun guy.
Right.
So he made, or led the decision to basically stop production of Thompson Center products, which sounds horrible, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, you just basically, hit the stop button on a dynasty, right? An iconic company, but he's running a publicly held company, and the demand for the Smith & Wesson products far and exceeded the demand for the Thompson Center products.
Right. It's business.
It's business, right? And he runs a publicly held company. He's got a fiduciary responsibility to the stockholders. So they converted all of the equipment and the personnel over to the Smith & Wesson product line. And they tried to sell the company, but they were trying to sell the intellectual property. And it was really tough. Like, so basically all your private equity people, and I had several of them contact me, by the way, they're like, well, what do we do? It's not a company that's running.
Right.
And so like, how do we, like, what do we do? Like, how do we rebuild this? So, so they shopped it for a while and it didn't go anywhere. And it became quiet. Well, October, or maybe October, November last year. Glenn Butcher. So he owns Bass and Bucks, which is a big retail company in Wabash, Indiana. He used to be one of the best Thompson Center dealers. He's a sports ink dealer. Mm-hmm. And so I knew him 20 years ago.
Okay.
Right? Calls me up. Hey, Greg, great to talk to you again. What are you up to these days? Blah, 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 blah. Right. And it's, again, always keep your network.
Right.
Because it's really easy to get a call from somebody and be like, I don't have any reason to call them back. I don't have any connection. Right. So I call Glenn back and we have a great conversation. He goes, would you ever be interested in bringing Thompson Center back? And I said, I've had this conversation a lot of times. And I said, here's what's on my heart. Absolutely. But it has to be privately owned, family owned, no private equity money,
right.
no publicly held. And if it can't be reassembled the way it was from a cultural standpoint, I have no interest. I'm good.
There's a lot of strings attached there with the publicly or the private equity and things. You don't really, a lot of times it seems like you're not really running the show. This podcast is brought to you by Muzzleloader Magazine, the publication for traditional black powder shooters. Since 1974, Muzzleloader has been the leading magazine devoted to traditional black powder hunting and shooting. Each issue is jam-packed with articles on hunting, shooting, gunsmithing, do-it-yourself projects, living history, American history, book and product reviews, and much, much more. I'd like to thank Jason at Muzzleloader Magazine for his continued support of I Love Muzzleloading and the I Love Muzzleloading podcast.
Yeah, well, you're correct, right? Because you're chasing quarterly earnings. You're making financial decisions for a business. And a lot of times those financial decisions don't lead to the best products, the best customer service, the best experience. Mm-hmm. And with WildCom, I really had, a window into all the companies in the industry. So, I mean, we work with, 300 companies in this industry. And when I look at the Matthews and I look at the Hornadys and I look at the Loopholes and I look at the Reconics and I look at the Grizzly Coolers, right? I can keep going. I can look at the Nose Jammers. I can look at the HHAs. I can look at the AAE who makes, Veins and Rest.
Yeah.
Literally, I can give you all of these companies, but then I can also give you the other companies, right, who aren't privately owned, right, that are driven by dollars, placements, margins, turns, just all financial matters. Not that it's wrong, Ethan. That's just not me.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
I said, Glenn, that's what's on my heart. He goes, you need to have a conversation, with a partner of mine and who has a big machining operation. He's in 4 states, does a lot of work for the defense and big ag and medical. Mm-hmm. And like, he's got the infrastructure, family owned, right. So it's himself, his brother, and his dad. So they have the same values that you and I have, because Glenn's business is family owned, build it from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay. I said, why not? It's a conversation. Anyway, long story short, we have that, and I'm like, okay, I'll call Mark Smith. Right, Mark's a friend of mine. Call him, and he said, Greg, there was nothing that would make me feel better than if this works, to have you back running TC. I would love to see that brand come back. Like, that was not the conversation I was expecting from Mark.
Right, kind of blindsided there.
Right. I'm expecting we're not interested, too much of a hassle, whatever. Or I'm expecting, some stupid number. Okay, if you can pay us $1 bazillion, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, Mark, I said, thank you for that. Like that alone means, that means a lot to me. So I said, well, we'll kind of come up with, with a range, see if it meets the board's expectations. And then if it does, I don't need a due diligence period. You're not going to tell me anything I don't already know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark said, yeah, he said, you can probably tell us some things we don't know. And yeah, so we closed April 12th, and that became the rebirth of Thompson Center.
I mean, that's great to hear that there's some honest stewardship there. It sounds like it wasn't just we're shutting it down, it's done, which I think is, with just like a press release, without any insider knowledge, that's how a lot of that can feel when a decision like that is made.
Absolutely. And so obviously we go down there once a week and we're working on the transition, because there are some gauges, fixtures, tooling, benches, equipment. There's little things. Obviously there's a lot of electronic files, and everybody has been supportive and saying, hey, tell us how we can help. And I'm talking on the Smith & Wesson side, because they all have day jobs, but they're like, this is just one of those things that we would love from an industry perspective to see you successful. And then Ethan, the light bulb went off. And between that and when we made the public announcement, like Thompson Center means something to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Like from a cultural standpoint, from an industry standpoint. And so now, it's coming back to family owned, privately owned, which I think the industry really is rallying behind right now, because I think in our society now, we want that. Yes.
Yeah. There's been some trends, I think, in for a lot of people, unfavorable directions with the publicly traded and that kind of thing. We're seeing just some changes there. Yep.
Yep. And I think to see a major gun company go that direction becomes a movement, right? So Thompson Center is, I think, bigger than a product, right? Bigger than something that you use to participate in a deer season or an elk hunt or at the range plinking, right? It stands for a certain value in today's society that people want to be attached to.
Yeah.
And, customer service, the peerless engineering, cool, current, great technology in their designs, but just the personal aspect of like, we care that you have a good experience. We care that we build the right product for you. We care that we build one at the right value for you.
Yeah.
And, we care about your experiences, and it's been a huge outpouring. And of course, now because of social media, like we hear it directly. And these big companies out there, if I were, to ever get in a boardroom and be asked the question, read your own social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to know what like, if you want to know what's going on with your product, go take a day, read your own social media, and you will know what you need to do with your company, because the consumer out there will tell you. You just have to listen.
In many ways, I think it connects back to you going in early and working on the warranty and the repair line. Those products were coming back with some kind of issue that the customer was having, and you were able to get hands-on with that and understand that with a variety of products from the product line. But with social media, you're getting that same kind of feedback, maybe, different ways. You're getting, I think, a very large spectrum on social media, but I think it's really crucial, and it's really great to see your focus on that of listening to what people are talking about, understanding what they're saying just in general, culturally, as well as what they're talking about with Thompson Center, and then using that to inform some of the decisions that you're making. It's great that it's not just happening in a boardroom or in a meeting room or on a Zoom call. You're taking that into account.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And then watching so we started a fan page as well, and watching the community talk to one another. hey, I've got this gun. Like I have, this is one of Warren Center's, original gun designs he had. And, oh, this is a Hawken I built as a kit years ago and blah, blah, blah. And watching these people share stories amongst one another, like they're around a campfire.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, that was the aha moment. And I'm like, just so blessed. The timing is right. The people are right, and every hire that we add to the TC family, right? Or they're going to have the same commitment to the customer, the same commitment to excellence and quality. We're still going to have the lifetime warranty, and they're going to be hunters and shooters, right? They're not just going to be from Black & Decker, right? Or DeWalt, right? And not to say that those people aren't really talented at what they do, but these people have to have a passion. Like if they're not asking off for a week in November, you're probably not going to be hired.
That's one of those, a little tell for you.
Yeah, exactly. But now we do have a mountain to climb, Ethan. I don't mind telling you, because the majority of what we are rebuilding everything from the ground up, and we're making great strides. I mean, I got 4 CNC machining centers in place that are right now being tooled to make Encore receivers. Right, we have castings already cast by Thompson Investment Castings, Encore receivers. I mean, we're working on the barrel line right now. So there's, are we going to get to where we need to immediately? No. Will we have product in the marketplace by October, November? 100%. And but I think more importantly is we're going to have a family out there that's excited to provide your product going forward.
Yeah. So you've talked about it a little bit on some of the live streams and some of the social videos that you've done, which not buttering you up here, but I think it's great to see getting out and taking questions and interacting with people live like that. You've talked a little bit about it, but for people who have not seen those, when are you expecting to release a new production Thompson Center muzzleloader? Is there a timeline for that, or is that just something that's on the list right now?
No. So great. Great question. So we're going to bring the Encore platform back first. Muzzleloader, obviously is key. But obviously centerfire, with a real focus on like straight wall cartridges that haven't been done, upgrading the barrels to, threaded muzzles for suppressors or brakes, upgrading to 5R rifling, which we pioneered back in the day with the Icon bolt action rifle. And then Smith didn't take that tooling and put it into the Encore Contender. So we're going to put a modern twist on the Encore. And so barrels will be coming out in October, receivers, October, November. Time for the season. Obviously, I wish it was earlier, but new production. You think every single vendor that we used has to be brought back online because Smith didn't make a product for 3 years. So in other words, if this transition occurred in 2021, it would have been quicker, faster, easier because everything's in motion.
Right.
Now everything's in mothballs.
Yeah, you're on the bottom of the list.
Correct. So it's breaking out the tooling for the stocks, right? And getting things, finding the gauges and the fixtures. So we've already placed our orders for breech plugs. These are one thing that we heard listening, right, to the people on social media and the people who give us feedback is, hey, I got a gun. I need a breech plug because I want to keep hunting with it.
Yeah, I need those replacement parts.
We need those replacement parts, right? So that magazines are already, when I say in the works, like the POs are cut, the drawings are done, right? We're cutting chips. Now we're 2 months away because you got to order material and get everything going in because there's, 8 different breech plugs, right? You got Encore, Omega, Black Diamond, Triumph, Speed Breech XT, But so all of those are in motion. In 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be cutting chips in the first Encore receiver.
Wow.
That's
great.
Not now. I still need all the other parts, right? I need the swing hammer and I need a sear and an interlock and a trigger guard and all that.
Yeah.
But we've only had the company for 2 months.
Right. That's pretty fast.
you know. But fortunately, having my previous engineering team, Carl Ricker, who was our director of engineering, who's been with the company for 30 years, right? Whose name's on a lot of these patents and has worked with the product. Like having that DNA really helps move us faster. And that's where I look back and go, I don't know how another company could have purchased Thompson Center intellectual property, like a Ruger, for example, or a Savage,
right,
or whoever. If they just bought the designs, it would take them forever to figure out how to manufacture it.
Yeah, you'd be having to analyze all of that and go back to ground zero. It might be faster to just start over, with
Correct,
new designs.
Because everything we're making now, so when we release the Encore barrel in October, it will fit the original Encore frame from 1997. When we bring out the Contender barrel, it will fit the Contender frame from 1965, or vice versa. So like keeping that level of, so think about that. Like that's pretty amazing. So, I think the opportunity is great now. So after the Encore, we're going to go to the Contender, and then, but we get asked a lot of times, hey, how about traditional guns?
Yeah. Yeah. That's on my question list.
Yeah. So, do I think we're going to have a Hawken out by next year? No, we have some other priorities on the inline side, bringing the Triumph back. People really love that gun. And, but, probably 2026, we're going to have the Hawken back. And I even would like to have a Hawken kit, because there's a lot of people now who like to, the do-it-yourself projects at home. And it would be cool to go right back to our roots from 1970 and bring back the kits and the original Hawken. And even if people just have fun or hang it above their mantle, or, hey, maybe you go hunting PA during, with the flintlock version for their, special buck season. We're not just going to do the 80-20 rule, right? This is 80% of our volume or 20% of these models. Nope. We're a muzzle loading company. So we're, over the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to build that assortment back up for you. And we've got some new technology we're working on too.
That was, kind of in line with my next thought here. I'm excited about that you guys are even expressing interest in the Hawken, let alone, the idea that you guys want to bring that back in that capacity is just fantastic. And I look forward to following that. There have been, though, a lot of updates to inline modern muzzleloaders since TC has really slowed down. What are some of the updates that you'd like to see in those in the future Thompson Center line, whether it's new models or just additions to the current ones? I mean, obviously I think you've mentioned like the suppressors and things, but is there anything else that you guys are eyeing that you can share?
So the number one thing that we're working on, and we'll have prototypes out, pre-production out this fall. We probably, I don't know that we're going to be shipping by this fall. We'll be shipping by the spring. Is we're going to have the fire stick and the Encore barrels.
Okay. Yeah, that was, yeah.
Because I will tell you, and hats off to Traditions who work with Federal on this. And we're working with Federal, we have all of their drawings, working with their engineers, understand all their specs. So we will have that as an accessory barrel and a complete gun with the fire stick. But there's also a couple other ignition systems we're playing with that are popular, more on the custom gun side. So you got the Hankins ignition system and you have the UMC ignition system.
Right.
Both use the large rifle primers.
Yep.
And so we're also experimenting with that on the Encore platform to see these. We want to build a long range muzzleloader. So something that goes beyond 200 yards. Is that 300 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards, kind of bullet powder ignition dependent. So, we have some concepts there because you have to build it as a system when you start pushing beyond 200 yards. You just can't say, add more powder.
Yeah.
Right.
It goes back to that vertical integration that we've been talking about.
Exactly. And, with our relationship with Hornady, we've already had some discussions about some different muzzleloader bullet designs. And the ones they make are phenomenal right now, but we have some other thoughts and considerations on what we can do to build that ultimate long range system. And then, we have some ideas on how to make adjustable peep sights so people can shoot out to those longer ranges in states that don't allow scopes. And then working, with the optics companies, working with the Loopholes and the Vortex and the Hawk scope companies on muzzleloading scopes that have a custom dial system. Right. Where now, a reticle is nice, and I'm very, very effective with the proper reticle out to 300 yards. It's been well documented on my TV show.
Right. Yeah.
But when you really want to fine tune it, turning that dial to the specific yardage is the right answer. So, having working with those optic companies to, again, now you have your optic, your bullet, your powder, your gun, your ignition system. So I think, give us to next fall, and people be like, okay, glad you're back in the game because the bar just got raised.
Right. Yeah. It's good to have not necessarily a new dog, but a fresh dog, maybe nipping at the heels of everybody, keeping everybody on their toes. Yeah.
Well, it does. I mean, hey, as I've told people, Tony Knight and Knight Rifles made Thompson Center better. Right. And then Thompson Center helped make Traditions and CVA better. I mean, all of these companies, and to your earlier point, by the way, with technology and equipment and materials and knowledge, SolidWorks designs, CAD designs, right? Like we can do things, 3D printing, we can do things we couldn't do before 15 years ago. Yeah. And the way we make barrels today, it has gotten so much better with video bore scopes and air gauging and, different things that we can do, on the adjustments on the equipment and the metallurgy that we have to deal with. And we're going to make sure we take all of that and, bring that under the Thompson Center umbrella.
That's fantastic. So is it safe to say then that you will be hunting this fall with a new production Thompson Center?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I personally will be hunting with an Encore fire stick muzzleloader. I will definitively say that. And, we have other ambassadors and outdoor writers and people, that will have the guns in their hands as well. In fact, just as a side note, I was having a conversation with Stale Cracker today. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a big Cajun cook. Okay. And huge social media following. I don't know, 11, 12, 13 million followers. Right. Oh, wow. Yeah. And he's become a friend of mine. And he's like, hey, what's a guy have to do to get on the short list for a TC and a 350 Legend?
People are already coming and asking.
Like, and they're already asking. I'm like, if you cook me some crawfish,
there we go.
Maybe we can make this happen. But yeah, so we're going to have new products for people to talk about. So they'll be available, in short supply. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's great. And, it's so fun to talk to the people in the industry, the Federals, the Remingtons, the Hornadys, all of these people who are trying to evolve the sport. They need a platform, right? They need a gun. Mm-hmm. And they know that Thompson Center is interchangeable, can move faster, right? We can work in smaller lots and be more flexible than a lot of other bigger gun companies. And so I spent a lot of my time, whiteboarding new products with these various companies every week, which is fantastic.
No, that's very exciting too. I mean, to recall back earlier, you have these periods of dramatic innovation, things slow down for a while, things change slowly, and then you have more dramatic periods of innovation. And it feels like over the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of that change, but I think we're getting ready to see some more I think, radically different change. We've kind of iterated a few times now, but I think we're lining up for something different.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I'll point out is when TC became dormant, and obviously there were marketplace changes to straight wall cartridges and long range rifles and obviously crossbows, right? And even your vertical bows, now shooting out to 80 and 100 yards. The spotlight got taken off of muzzle loading for a generation.
Yeah. The industry just shifted.
So, you look at my daughter's ages, right? So if you start looking at people from 18 to 30, okay, they really don't have a lot of experience in muzzleloading because it wasn't prominent when they started to hunt, right? When they became 16, 17, 20, 25 years old, it wasn't being promoted, wasn't being popularized. Other things were.
Yeah. So
there's a whole demographic of younger hunters that the Thompson Center is going to wrap their arms around because, that is our future. I mean, obviously, the baby boomers and the millennials and the Gen Xers and all that, my age group and my dad's age and all that, we're going to revive that tradition for them. But that tradition doesn't exist with the 20-year-olds.
Yeah, there has to be a connection made there. There has to be a handoff of something like muzzleloading. It's not something that a lot of people, there are people out there that can go to a store, pick it up, and fall in love. But it's the kind of thing that really flourishes with that generational handoff.
We're gonna try to be that company that helps facilitate that, right? And because then I think that gets the excitement and the wheel rolling again. And then obviously they utilize that age bracket. They utilize social media.
Yeah.
Right. And let them be our voice to the market because they will Snapchat about it. They will do a reel on it. They will TikTok on it. They will live their life and share what they do to their world.
Yeah.
That's the beauty. So, figuring out how to communicate to them, and building products that they want because their product requests are going to be different than, somebody who's 60 years old.
Yeah. A lot of my audience is split between people who have been into muzzleloading longer than I've been alive and people who think that they're interested in it. And it's all very complex and it can be a little daunting at times. And when you've been in it for 20, 30 years, it's hard to remember those first questions that you had. And I think it's important for us to embrace that and try to answer those questions for people so that we're continuing to expose them to this and complete that handoff really.
It exactly. So and we recognize that. So we're going to try to be that voice in the use of YouTube now. So Thompson Center will start our YouTube in August, and we're going to take you on the journey. We're going to show you the good, bad, and the ugly. We're going to show you the challenges we have. We're going to show you how we design guns, how we test guns. Like there won't be this surprise when something comes out.
Right.
Like you're gonna watch the baby be born. And but through that, it's a medium that this younger generation is used to engaging with. So as they see it, they understand more about the company and our values and the commitment of the people and who are the faces.
Right.
And we hope that helps spark their interest in the company. And then, and then they start utilizing the products, then they share their experience. So then that becomes a waterfall moment.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's going to be great to see you guys execute on this strategy and bring a contemporary look at all of this. I think it's going to be great to watch in the coming weeks, really. But years in scale.
Yeah, it will. And I certainly appreciate what you do and your voice to the marketplace, because obviously I love muzzleloading stands for something, right? Is you're passionate about it and you're on the younger end of the demo, and what you do in this, medium, this podcast, right? It reaches a different demographic in a different way. And so, I give you a lot of credit for, carrying that voice of the sport to other people.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you, Gregg.
So TCs, we got a long way to go, but we're going to get there. And we certainly thank all the great supporters we've had and all the outpouring from people. And I want to remind everybody listening here that please go onto our social media platforms, send us a comment, send us a DM, interact with us, and tell us how we're doing. Right. And give us a report card, give us new product ideas, share experiences with us. Like we want to hear from you. We will do our best to respond. It may be not the next day, but we'll do our best to interact with you and share with everybody, the experiences behind the product.
It's a little bit of a side note on this, but are you guys at all concerned with some of the limitations that several of the social media sites have put on firearms and manufacturing of them and just the culture in general?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, obviously you can't put anything on TikTok right now that's firearms or animal related. We ran a post the other day for Wildcom, one of our properties. It was just a velvet buck. Okay. A velvet deer.
Yeah.
That's it.
They're in velvet right now.
That's it. They're in velvet. Nobody's hunting. And we got flagged and took it down. TikTok took it down.
Jeez.
So that is real. And that's why, building as big a voice in the marketplace as we can through as many vehicles. So obviously you have social platforms, you have digital platforms, whether it's YouTube or other digital ways, we have, our own website. We can communicate. Television is still strong in the Huntmasters television show. I'm going to continue to host and help bring people through these journeys on TV where you don't have censorship.
Right.
And then obviously conversations like this on podcast. So I'm hoping we should have this same conversation in January, February. Let's get through the season.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, what happened? Like we talked 6 months ago, where are you now 6 months from now? And so I think utilizing the podcast forum is going to be really important for us to communicate to that younger demo without being censored.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. I think having I refer to it as pirate radio a lot of the times is podcasting was early enough in the tech and the internet that it's like email. It hasn't really been messed with a whole lot. And you can have these conversations and do these things that you should be able to.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, and what's great is they are just conversations, right? They're thoughtful, they're engaging, and they're not restrictive, which is fantastic.
Well, cool, Gregg. I appreciate that. That was kind of an off-the-wall question, but I appreciate that you guys acknowledge that and are working on, working within the constraints and finding ways to still get the word out there and still promote muzzleloading at the end of the day.
Well, we will. We're committed, to the sport of muzzleloading, to the firearm industry, and to USA Made. Those things are not going to change. And, the marketplace will change here and there. We'll adapt and evolve. But at the end of the day, if you just listen to the users, they'll tell you what you need to do.
I'd like to thank Gregg for taking time out of his busy schedule here of getting Thompson Center back online to talk with me and talk a little bit about the muzzleloading side specifically for Thompson Center. As with many of these interviews, it's going to be interesting to see what comes about in the next 6, 8, 12 months and see how many of these production targets Gregg and the Thompson Center team can meet. It's quite the undertaking. I think most of us know that. So I'm looking forward to following up with Gregg after the fall hunting season here to see if we can get any updates about how Thompson Center is doing and if they are meeting these production goals and if they're still on track to build a traditional side lock Thompson Center muzzleloader sometime in 2026. I think that's one of the key things that many of us in muzzleloading are looking out for. The hunting population in general is more interested in the modern and the inline stuff, but I think it will be fascinating to see if Thompson Center can keep their feet in both camps here and bring back some kind of anniversary style Hawken that really built the groundwork for them to excel to where they went to. And I think that still is a target for where they can go. Right now, Traditions and Pedersoli, I think, are the only companies out there that have feet in both camps of the traditional and the modern side. So I'm fascinated to see if Thompson Center can make that work as well. That's all I've got for you. If you have any questions for Gregg, shoot me an email at ilovemuzzleloading@gmail.com, and I'll do what I can to include those questions in our follow-up with Gregg in a few short months. Once again, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.